What if I told you that the perfect morning routine, the one that all those productivity gurus are always trying to sell you?
Oh, right, the ones you see plastered all over social media.
Exactly, those ones. Well, what if I told you that waking up at 5 in the morning is actually biologically destructive for like roughly 30% of the population?
Wow. Yeah, that completely goes against everything we're
Yes.
taught.
It really does. So today, we are completely dismantling that myth. We're looking way beyond those glossy magazine articles about how highly successful people start their days.
Right, because the reality is much more complicated.
Exactly. Instead, we are going to examine the messy, fascinating reality of human biology and daily habits. So, welcome to our deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to thoroughly explore the concept of daily routines. Specifically, we are going to dissect morning habits, and we're going to do this by analyzing a very specific conversation between two individuals.
Two people named Emily and Paul.
Right. But before we jump into that, we want to establish something really important right at the top of this deep dive.
Yes, absolutely. We know that a significant portion of you listening today, our audience, are actively learning the English language.
Which is amazing.
It is. And we know you use discussions like this one to, train your ear, to
Yeah.
understand natural conversational flow, and to build up your working vocabulary.
Right, and we really want to honor that today.
We do. So our approach is going to be slightly tailored. We are going to speak at a very deliberate, relaxed pace.
Nice and easy.
Exactly. We will use clear, accessible vocabulary to explain some of these concepts because some of the psychological concepts can get a bit complex.
But just to be clear, we are not going to water down the actual ideas. The concepts we discuss will still be deep.
Oh, definitely.
It's just that the language we use to explain them will be incredibly clear. We'll frequently pause to emphasize key phrases from our source text too.
Right, ensuring that you can comfortably follow along. We don't want you feeling overwhelmed by like an avalanche of rapid-fire jargon.
Right, nobody likes that. We want you to really absorb the mechanics of the English language while also absorbing the mechanics of human behavior.
It's a dual purpose.
Exactly. So let's set the stage for our source material. We are looking at a dialogue from the Mr. English series.
Right, and it's a seemingly simple conversation on the surface.
But it acts as a perfect psychological mirror, doesn't it?
It really does. Right from the opening lines, the text establishes this massive contrast between the two speakers.
Yeah, you notice it immediately.
You do. So Emily opens the conversation feeling absolutely wonderful. She is vibrant. She's already eaten a full breakfast. She's had her coffee.
Crucial detail, the coffee.
Very crucial. And she's just projecting this really high energy.
Right. But then Paul, on the other hand, presents a completely different energy signature.
Completely different.
He is calm. He's steady. He is very grounded. I mean, he agrees with Emily about certain things, like the importance of coffee, obviously, but his overall approach to the morning is far more measured.
So the text sets up this classic dynamic, right? You have this high expressive energy on one side versus calm, methodical stability on the other.
And as we will see, this contrast in their conversational tone perfectly reflects the underlying architecture of their actual daily habits.
It gives us the perfect laboratory to examine how different humans transition from being unconscious to being fully active participants in the world.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to transition from simply meeting Paul and Emily into the actual mechanical breakdown of their mornings.
Right, the step-by-step.
And logically, we have to start at the absolute beginning, the friction of waking up. Because, before anyone can execute a beautiful, healthy morning routine, they have to actually navigate the transition from sleep to wakefulness.
That is the universal biological requirement. You have to open your eyes. You have to return to consciousness.
You do.
Yeah.
And the timing of that return to consciousness is where our text reveals its first major insight.
Right, the actual wake-up times.
Yes. The source material explicitly tells us that Paul wakes up at 6:30 a.m. on weekdays. Monday through Friday, he is up at 6:30.
That's pretty early.
It is. And he achieves this by using an alarm clock. And this is the interesting part, he makes a rather stunning confession to Emily.
He does. He admits that if he does not use his alarm clock, he would naturally sleep until 9:00 a.m.
Which is a huge difference.
It really is. 2.5 hours.
Right. And meanwhile, Emily tells Paul that she wakes up at 8 a.m. and she firmly rejects the label of being an early bird. She proudly declares herself a night owl who naturally likes to stay up late.
And this brings us to two essential vocabulary terms that we should emphasize for our English learners.
Oh, yes. Let's break those down.
These are foundational cultural idioms in English, the early bird and the night owl. So when we call someone an early bird, we are not just saying they wake up early. The cultural implication, especially in the English-speaking world, is that this person is naturally productive, energetic, and frankly, virtuous in the morning.
Right. It ties back to that old proverb, right?
Exactly. The early bird catches the worm.
Right. It suggests that there's an inherent reward for early rising. Like, you're a better person if you get up early.
Yes, exactly. And conversely, we have the night owl. This is the person who feels most awake, most creative, and most energetic late in the evening, or even deep into the night.
Like an actual owl.
Exactly. But notice the cultural bias there. The early bird gets the worm, they get the reward. But night owls often get characterized by society as lazy.
Oh, totally. Just because their energy peaks when the rest of the corporate world is sleeping?
That cultural bias is profound, and it leads directly to the situation we see with Paul in our text.
Right.
The text shows Paul leaning into this identity of an early riser. He is up at 6:30 a.m. But we have to look at the mechanism of how he does it.
And this is exactly where I want to push back on Paul's entire routine.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, Paul might call himself an early riser, but I am looking at the facts from the text. He relies entirely on a machine making a loud noise to jolt him awake at 6:30.
right, the alarm clock.
And he openly confesses that his body actually wants to sleep until 9:00 a.m.
He does say that.
So I have to ask, is Paul truly a natural early bird, or is he just a victim of modern work culture who was forced to act like one? I mean, isn't he just chronically depriving himself of the sleep his body is begging for?
What's fascinating here is the tension between biological reality and designed behavior. You're hitting on a concept that chronobiologists call social jet lag.
Wait, social jet lag. Let's pause and emphasize that term for listeners. Social jet lag. What exactly does that mean in this context?
So social jet lag occurs when your biological clock, your natural internal timing, is completely out of sync with your social or professional schedule.
Ah, I see. Like actual jet lag from flying, but caused by your lifestyle?
Exactly. Every human being has a natural chronotime, and this is partly dictated by genetics, specifically variations in genes like the PER3 gene.
Really? It's genetic.
It is. Your genetics literally dictate whether your brain wants to release melatonin, which is the sleep hormone, early in the evening or late at night.
So it is not a choice. It's written into our DNA.
Exactly. You can't just choose to be an early bird if your DNA says otherwise. Some people are biologically designed to be night owls.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and from an evolutionary standpoint, anthropologists call this the sentinel hypothesis.
The sentinel hypothesis.
Right. So when early humans lived in tribes, it was highly advantageous to have different sleep schedules.
Oh, I think I see where you're going with this.
Right. If some people naturally stayed awake late into the night and others woke up before the sun, the tribe always had someone awake to watch for predators.
Wow. It was a built-in survival mechanism.
Yeah.
So Emily, waking up at 8 a.m. and identifying as a night owl is just operating on her natural evolutionary programming. She is essentially the night watchman of the tribe.
Yes, she's fulfilling that evolutionary role. And Paul is exhibiting the classic symptoms of social jet lag
Right.
because his natural biological rhythm wants him to sleep until 9:00 a.m. That is his genetic preference. But he forces a 6:30 a.m. wake up.
Yeah.
He uses an alarm clock as this blunt instrument to override his biology.
It's essentially a daily act of violence against his own nervous system, if you think about it.
From a physiological standpoint, yes. When an alarm clock wakes you from deep sleep, it causes a sudden spike in adrenaline and cortisol.
Which is stressful.
Highly stressful. It elevates your heart rate artificially.
Yeah.
So to answer your earlier question, no, Paul is not a natural early bird.
He's just faking it.
Well, he has engineered his behavior to fit a specific lifestyle or work schedule. He is absorbing the biological cost of that friction every single morning.
Which makes Paul's reaction to Emily in the text so interesting.
How so?
Well, when Emily admits she sleeps until 8:00 a.m., Paul doesn't criticize her.
That's true, he doesn't.
Right, he doesn't tell her she is wasting the day or being lazy. The text tells us he simply says, 8:00 a.m. is still a good time. He is remarkably supportive.
He's validating her routine, and he's acknowledging that the actual time on the clock is arbitrary.
Right.
What really matters is the consistency. Paul knows how hard it is to wake up. I mean, he needs an alarm to do it. So he respects that Emily has found a time that actually works for her.
That's a great point. It makes me want to pause and ask you, the listener, to evaluate your own mornings.
Yes, think about your own routine.
We want you to think about this concept of social jet lag. Which category do you fall into? Do you rely on an alarm clock like Paul? Are you dragging yourself out of bed to meet the demands of a schedule, fighting your biology every step of the way?
Or are you able to naturally wake up at your preferred time like Emily?
Right. Are you a natural early bird, a forced early bird, or a proud night owl? Recognizing your own natural rhythm is the foundational step in understanding why your mornings feel either effortless or completely exhausting.
Because once that alarm rings, or once your eyes naturally open, you immediately face the next hurdle.
Oh, yeah, the physical transition.
Exactly. You have to go from lying horizontal, completely relaxed, to standing upright and actually functioning.
Right. And that brings us to the next sequential phase of their morning. We are moving from the timing of the wake up to the very first physical actions they take.
We're looking at the battle against what scientists call sleep inertia.
Sleep inertia. That's a great term. Let's explain that for our learners.
So sleep inertia is that groggy, heavy feeling you experience immediately upon waking.
Like your brain is full of cotton.
Exactly. Your brain is still flooded with sleep chemicals and your motor skills are slightly impaired. You're clumsy, you're slow.
Yeah.
Overcoming sleep inertia is the primary goal of any morning routine.
Okay, so let's look at how our two subjects tackle this problem. The text gives us very precise details.
It does. Let's look at Emily first.
Emily's first steps are incredibly immediate. The moment she is out of bed, she drinks a big glass of water. Then she washes her face. Finally, she brushes her teeth.
Right, that's her sequence.
That is her sequence. And she provides a direct explanation for the water. She states, quote, "It helps me wake up."
It's a sequence of rapid sensory inputs.
Now contrast that with Paul. Paul's approach is entirely different. His first step is focused on prolonged physical movement.
Very deliberate movement.
Right. The text tells us he tries to exercise, he usually goes for a short walk, or he does 10 minutes of yoga.
And what's his rationale for that?
He tells Emily that this physical movement makes him feel, quote, energized. And only after this dedicated period of exercise does he move on to showering and getting dressed.
So we're looking at two fundamentally different philosophies for activating the human nervous system. Emily relies on hydration and a quick shock, while Paul relies on sustained muscular activation.
I really want to focus on the specific vocabulary used in the text here, because the distinction is vital for understanding their mindsets.
Let's hear it.
So, Emily says the water helps her wake up. The phrase wake up simply implies achieving basic consciousness.
Right, just getting to a baseline.
It is the minimal requirement to not be asleep. But Paul uses the word energized.
Energized. Right, meaning infused with energy, vitality, and power.
There is a massive gap between being merely awake and being energized. To me, looking at these two routines is like looking at two completely different ways of starting a machine.
Though I like that analogy, break that down.
Okay, so Emily's routine is like starting a car engine with a quick turn of the key, or like flushing out the cache on a computer. She needs an immediate hard reset. She uses cold water on her face to shock her nervous system, essentially clearing out the leftover sleep chemicals so her brain can start processing new information.
It's an abrupt functional reset.
Exactly. But Paul's routine is like letting the engine warm up slowly or booting up highly complex software.
Right, takes time.
He doesn't want a quick shock. He wants a systematic activation. His yoga and walking are designed to slowly kickstart his cardiovascular system. He is deliberately telling his body to naturally pump cortisol and circulate blood before he demands any heavy mental lifting from his brain.
Your analogy highlights the biological mechanisms perfectly. Let's analyze the why behind Emily's glass of water.
Yeah, let's get into the science of that.
Because it sounds simple, but it is deeply physiological. When you sleep for 7 or 8 hours, you are constantly exhaling moisture through your breath.
Right.
You're also sweating. So by the time you wake up, your body is in a state of mild dehydration.
Your brain has literally lost water volume overnight.
Precisely. And dehydration directly causes a drop in blood volume, which means lower blood pressure.
Okay, following you.
When your blood pressure is low, your brain does not receive optimal oxygen and nutrients. This is a major contributor to morning brain fog.
So that's why we feel so sluggish.
Exactly. By immediately drinking a large glass of water, Emily is rapidly expanding her blood volume. She is increasing the blood pressure to her brain, effectively washing away that groggy feeling.
That's amazing. And then she follows it up with washing her face. Which sounds like basic hygiene, but there is a neurological trick happening there too, isn't there?
Yes, there is. It's called the mammalian dive reflex.
The mammalian dive reflex. What is that?
So when cold water hits the receptors on your face, particularly around your nose and eyes, it triggers an ancient survival reflex in your nervous system.
Like when a seal dives into the ocean.
Exactly like that. It instantly alerts your brain, increases your heart rate slightly, and sharpens your focus. It forces you to be alert.
So Emily is basically hacking her nervous system with water. Hydration from the inside, cold shock from the outside.
It really is.
It's brilliant because it requires almost zero willpower, which makes total sense for a night owl. If your energy is naturally low in the morning, you want actions that have high biological impact but require very little physical effort.
She is intentionally removing friction. She knows her biological battery is low at 8:00 a.m., so she chooses the path of least resistance to start the engine.
But then we have Paul. Paul requires an immense amount of willpower for his routine.
He really does.
I mean, waking up at 6:30 with an alarm already requires willpower, but then choosing to do 10 minutes of yoga or go for a walk outside, that requires serious intention.
It does. Let's examine the mechanism of Paul's movement. He is triggering something called the cortisol awakening response, or WAMSAR.
Cortisol. Isn't that a bad thing?
Well, cortisol is often labeled the stress hormone, but in the morning, it's actually the action hormone. A natural, healthy spike in cortisol is what makes you feel alert and ready to tackle challenges.
And exercise forces that spike.
Exactly. The stretching in yoga and the cardiovascular effort of walking manually pump lymphatic fluid around the body. It forces the heart to beat faster, pushing oxygenated blood to the muscles and the brain.
Okay, I see.
Paul is not waiting for his body to wake up naturally. He is mechanically forcing his body into an energized state through deliberate movement.
But here is where I struggle with Paul's method.
Okay, what's the issue?
I understand the biology of the cortisol awakening response. But if we go back to our earlier point, Paul is already waking up artificially with an alarm.
Right.
He is already shocking his system. So is this morning yoga truly about health? Or is he just desperately trying to manufacture the energy he lost by not sleeping until 9:00 a.m.?
That is a highly perceptive critique. It's very possible that Paul's intricate, movement-based morning routine is essentially just a coping mechanism.
A coping mechanism for the social jet lag.
Exactly. Because he forces himself awake against his natural chronotype, he experiences severe sleep inertia. Therefore, a simple glass of water is not enough for him.
Ah, I see.
He needs the heavy artillery of a walk and a yoga session just to reach the baseline level of alertness that Emily achieves with just a splash of water.
Wow. So the early bird routine that society praises so highly might actually just be an elaborate recovery process from the trauma of the alarm clock.
It's entirely possible.
That is a fascinating way to look at it. It entirely changes the perspective on what a healthy habit really is.
It emphasizes that routines are highly individual. What is optimal for Emily's biology would fail for Paul, and vice versa.
Right. Which brings us to a critical intersection in their mornings. Despite the different wake-up times, despite the different methods of fighting sleep inertia water versus yoga, both Emily and Paul eventually arrive at the exact same location.
And where is that?
They both end up in the kitchen.
The universal morning destination.
Yes. We are moving into their breakfast philosophies. And this is where the text reveals some brilliant ironies about how we spend our time.
Oh, this part is really interesting.
It is. So Paul makes a very definitive statement in the dialogue. He declares that breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Let's pause on that phrase. The most important meal of the day. This is an incredibly common cultural belief in English-speaking societies.
Everybody has heard that phrase.
Exactly. For decades, it has been repeated as an unquestionable truth of health and nutrition. The implication is that skipping breakfast leads to a disastrous, unproductive day.
Though it is worth noting, historically, that phrase was largely popularized by marketing campaigns from cereal companies trying to sell more product in the early 20th century.
That's true. It has roots in advertising.
But regardless of its origin, Paul believes it deeply. He views breakfast as a foundational pillar of his day.
So how does he execute this incredibly important meal?
That is the ironic part. Paul, who believes breakfast is the most important meal, tells Emily that he eats oatmeal with fruit.
It sounds healthy enough.
It is. But his primary reason for this choice, he says it is quick and easy.
Oh.
Now, let's contrast this with Emily. Emily, who skipped any form of morning exercise and just splashed water on her face, goes into the kitchen and prepares a hot, cooked meal.
She actually cooks.
Yes. She eats eggs and toast. And, crucially, She drinks a cup of coffee.
We have a fascinating reversal of effort here.
We really do. Let's examine this reversal. Paul is the deliberate one. He spends 20 or 30 minutes stretching, doing yoga, going for a walk, and taking a shower. He invests heavy effort into his body.
Right.
But when it comes to the kitchen, when it comes to the meal he calls the most important of the day, he suddenly demands extreme efficiency. He wants quick and easy oatmeal.
Meanwhile, Emily, who wanted the absolute fastest, lowest effort wake-up possible, just a glass of water so it only slows down.
Right.
She embraces friction in the kitchen. Cooking eggs requires heating a pan, managing the cooking process, and cleaning up afterward. Toasting bread takes time. She is dedicating significant effort to a traditional, heavy meal.
It seems entirely contradictory at first glance. The person who rushes the physical wake-up takes her time cooking breakfast, and the person who takes his time with the physical wake-up rushes the breakfast. Why the flip?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is not a contradiction at all. It is a perfect demonstration of time budgeting and psychological priorities.
Time budgeting. Explain that.
Every single morning, you are given a strict, limited budget of time before your workday begins.
Yeah.
You have to decide how you are going to spend those minutes.
It is an economy of time.
Exactly. Paul's choices reflect a very specific allocation of his time budget. He places the highest value on physical activation. He needs that yoga and that walk to overcome his social jet lag.
Right.
Because he spends his time budget on exercise, he is basically bankrupt when he gets to the kitchen. He literally has no time left to cook. Therefore, his nutrition must be quick and easy.
That makes total sense. And oatmeal serves that purpose biologically as well. It is a complex carbohydrate. It has a low glycemic index, meaning it digests slowly and provides a steady release of glucose to the brain over several hours.
Yes, it's very functional.
It is highly efficient fuel that requires zero cooking skill.
Yes. Paul treats food as functional fuel to support the physical machine he just activated. But Emily's time budget is allocated entirely differently.
Right, because she didn't exercise.
Exactly. She skips the morning workout, she reclaims those 30 minutes, and how does she spend them? She spends them on the psychological comfort of a hot meal.
For Emily, the ritual is the preparation. The smell of the eggs cooking, the warmth of the toast, the process of sitting down to a substantial meal that is her version of yoga.
That's a great way to put it.
That is what grounds her and prepares her mind for the day ahead. She is prioritizing psychological comfort over physical activation.
It highlights a crucial lesson for our listeners. When you design your own morning routine, you cannot do everything perfectly.
You really can't.
You cannot have a 30-minute workout, an hour of meditation, a perfectly cooked gourmet breakfast, and a relaxed shower unless you wake up at 3 in the morning.
And nobody wants to do that.
Right. You have to choose where you spend your time. You have to prioritize what actually makes you feel ready.
And this brings us to the one unifying element in this entire text. The one thing that bridges the massive gap between the forced early bird and the natural night owl.
The great equalizer.
The great equalizer. The coffee.
The coffee.
In the very first lines of the text, Emily says she feels wonderful because she had a great breakfast and a cup of coffee. And later, when they are discussing food, Paul explicitly states, coffee is a big part of my morning too.
Neither of them compromises on this point.
No, they don't. So I have to ask, is coffee the one universal language of morning routines? Is it the only habit that transcends biology?
It certainly appears to be the anchor for both of their mornings. And again, we can look at the mechanism. Why is coffee so universal?
Right. What's happening in the brain?
It goes back to that sleep chemical we discussed earlier, adenosine. Throughout the day, adenosine builds up in your brain, making you feel tired. When you sleep, your brain clears it out.
Okay.
But in the morning, especially if you have sleep inertia, some adenosine remains attached to the receptors in your brain.
Making you feel groggy.
Right. Caffeine, which is the active chemical in coffee, is an antagonist to adenosine. It has a similar molecular shape. So the caffeine rushes into your brain and physically blocks the adenosine receptors.
Wow.
It prevents the sleep chemical from telling your brain that it is tired. It artificially induces a state of alertness.
So whether you are Emily, struggling to wake up because it is early for your chronotype, or Paul, struggling to wake up because your alarm went off prematurely, caffeine provides the exact same neurochemical solution. It chemically, forcefully removes the feeling of fatigue.
It is the great equalizer because it overrides our natural biological limitations. It allows the night owl to function in an early bird world, and it allows the early bird to survive the trauma of the alarm clock.
That's so true.
Furthermore, it is a deeply ingrained cultural ritual. The warmth of the mug, the bitter aroma, these sensory details provide a moment of psychological pause before the demands of work begin.
It is the quiet moment before the storm. Both Paul and Emily, despite their different paths, need that quiet moment.
They do. So as we zoom out and view this entire dialogue objectively, what are the primary lessons we have uncovered for our listeners? What should they take away from this analysis of Emily and Paul?
We have covered a massive amount of psychological and biological ground today. Let's distill it down.
Good idea.
First, we explored the reality of chronotypes. We learned that the labels early bird and night owl are not just preferences, they are often rooted in our genetics.
Right.
We saw that a routine is not always natural, it is often a structure we impose on ourselves. Paul's use of an alarm clock demonstrated the concept of social jet lag, forcing his body to wake up hours before his natural rhythm intended.
Second, we examined the mechanics of overcoming sleep inertia. We saw that waking up is not a single event, but a process of reducing biological friction.
Exactly.
We contrasted Emily's low-effort, immediate hydration using water to boost blood pressure and the mammalian dive reflex to shock the system with Paul's deliberate, high-effort physical activation. We learned how exercise triggers the cortisol awakening response.
Finally, we analyzed the economics of morning time through their breakfast choices. We discovered the profound irony of Paul needing a quick and easy breakfast to subsidize his workout time, while Emily skipped the workout to invest her time in the psychological comfort of a hot, cooked meal.
It's all about trade-offs.
Right. We learned that a successful routine requires ruthless prioritization of your limited morning minutes.
And we confirmed that despite all our biological differences, the neurochemical blockade provided by a cup of coffee remains a foundational pillar of modern human survival.
Exactly. Now, according to the source material, this conversation between Emily and Paul is just the beginning. The text gives us a clear teaser for their next interaction.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Emily mentions that they will soon be discussing their work and study routines.
That will be a brilliant continuation. We have spent all this time analyzing how they generate their energy and prepare their biological machines.
Yeah.
In their next conversation, we will get to analyze how they actually deploy that energy into the world. How do they focus? How do they manage tasks? The habits of preparation will transition into the habits of execution.
It is definitely something to look forward to. But before we conclude this deep dive, we want to bring this entirely back to you, the listener.
Yes. Think about your own life.
We want to echo the challenge that Emily presents at the very end of the source text. She asks Paul, and by extension, she asks the audience, which one are you?
We want to urge you to be highly observant of your own behavior tomorrow morning. When consciousness returns to you, pay attention to the mechanics of your routine.
Exactly.
Do you naturally align with Emily? Do you feel that heavy friction of the morning, requiring simple, low-effort actions like a glass of water to clear the brain fog? Do you prioritize the ritual of a slow breakfast over the physical demand of exercise?
Or do you operate more like Paul? Are you heavily reliant on an alarm clock to dictate your schedule? Do you feel a mandatory need to physically move your body, to stretch or walk, just to manufacture the energy required for the day?
Right.
Do you view food merely as quick, efficient fuel? Notice where you spend your time budget.
Awareness of your current habits is the only way to eventually change or optimize them.
And as we close out, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over, something to critically examine the next time you prepare for bed.
Lay it on us.
Think about the immense, complex architecture of Paul's morning. He is incredibly disciplined.
He is.
He forces himself awake, he executes 10 minutes of yoga, he goes for a walk to stimulate his cardiovascular system, he prepares his highly efficient, low glycemic oatmeal. He is the absolute picture of modern, health-conscious productivity. He has built a masterpiece of a routine.
It is highly impressive on paper.
But, as he confessed in the text, if he forgets to set his little digital alarm clock, or if the power goes out in his house, that entire magnificent routine instantly vanishes. It ceases to exist.
Wow, yeah.
His biology takes over, and he sleeps until 9:00 a.m.
The entire system collapses from a single point of failure.
Exactly. So here's the question I want you to ponder. Does an incredibly healthy, perfectly optimized, highly disciplined daily routine actually mean anything if it is entirely dependent on a tiny, fragile piece of electronics traumatizing your nervous system into waking up in the first place?
That is a great question.
Who is really in control of the morning, you or the clock? Think about that the next time you set your alarm. We will catch you on the next deep dive.